What's up, guys? Welcome back to RAD. I put a video together showing you the steps I took building my custom dovetail spoiler for my Mustang. I made this all out of fiberglass and bonded it to the SMC trunk, which is basically a fiberglass composite. So I knew I wanted to shave the rear spoiler on it, and I always felt like the car was missing something in the back. It just looked kind of odd. The trunk kind of didn't come out as far as it should, and the bumper sticks way out. So I'm happy with the way it came out. It's very sleek and subtle, and that I like. So first thing first, you gotta take the old spoiler off. 4 bolts under the trunk, nice and easy. So what I did next was I actually cut off the back edge of the spoiler and sacrificed it for the project. To use as a mold for the fiberglass on the extension piece that I was going to actually be making. I cut a bunch of relief cuts in it so that I could bend it and shape it, and I moved it around on the trunk, seeing where I wanted it to end, how far I wanted it up, how far I wanted it back, and when I was happy with it, I kind of taped it down. I just used some paint sticks and tape and just stuff like that, just to kind of hold the fleece material where I need it. So when I had it positioned where I wanted it, I actually covered the whole trunk and the tops of the quarter panels, everywhere where I was going to be fiberglassing, with clear packing tape to protect the paint, and so I didn't have fiberglass resin sticking on everything. And here's going to be the new profile from the side. Then I grabbed a piece of fleece, and I wrapped a thin piece of balsa wood actually in it and stapled it to it. That is actually going to act as the bottom edge of the back of the dovetail spoiler, if that makes any sense. It's going to ride that ridge right above the taillights. So I clamped that edge down first and pulled the fleece up over the edge of the spoiler piece that I cut and stretched it. I got all the wrinkles out, and it was at this point where I can actually see the shape of what it was actually going to look like when it was done. At this point, I mixed up some fiberglass resin and I just totally saturated the fleece. You want it 100% saturated, and I used a couple weights and things just to hold tension on it and the wrinkles out of it while it was actually curing. So I let it dry overnight, then I popped it off and I trimmed off all the excess fleece and trimmed it and shaped it, and just kind of clamped it on the trunk where it's going to go, and just saw kind of where I'd have to prep the trunk to have it receive the new panel. Once I was happy with it and I had everything marked, I went over the trunk with a grinder. I think it was like 36 grit. I took off all the paint and actually dug down into the fiberglass a little bit and gave it a good tooth so that the bonding adhesives would really stick well to the trunk. I actually used a 2-part epoxy panel bonder to actually adhere the fleece piece to the trunk, and also to fill the spoiler holes that are in the trunk. So I let the adhesive dry overnight before I started messing with it. I actually went over all the new panel with some might have been 40 grit or 80 grit, just to take the sheen off the resin off of the fleece, so that I could start building fiberglass layers on top of that. I think when I was all done, I had about 4 layers of fiberglass, each layer slightly extending so it would taper nicely into the trunk. I would lay down a layer of fiberglass, roll all the air bubbles out of it, let it flash off, let it tack. Usually takes about 20 minutes, and go right back over it with another piece. And I would pre-cut all my fiberglass matting ahead of time. It just makes everything go smoother. Yeah, a few days later, I came back and sanded it all down with 80 grit on a DA sander, and then I started doing the fillers. So I coated it first with door glass, which is basically a fiberglass reinforced body filler, and I covered everything with it. So once that was done, I actually cut in for a third brake light. I have a little LED strip, which you can actually see there in the center. I just took a cutoff wheel and marked where I was going to put it, and I cut down slightly into the fiberglass, and when I did my body work on it, my layers of filler, I just worked out, and I didn't put any filler in that area where the third brake light's going to go. And I just built it up. I don't even know, I probably have maybe 4 or 5 coats of body filler on it. I'd put a coat on, sand it, and just try to get it to roll into the old trunk as smooth as possible. So once that was done, I finished up sanding all the filler and all the prime areas with 220 grit. You can see here I actually filled the holes where the Ford emblem goes on the back too, and taping it up, cleaning it, and getting it ready for primer. So next up, I mixed up some 2K high build primer. I use U-Pol, and I gave it 3 good wet coats. So at this point, it's all done. It's drying. It sat around for about a week before I even messed with it. And as you can see here, I didn't sand it or anything. I just hit it with 1 light coat of a flat black spray can. Later on, it'll act as a guide coat, and for now, it's just cosmetic. And here it is getting mounted on the car. I actually had to slightly slot the hinge holes on the car so that the trunk would actually slide more forward towards the rear glass to tighten up that gap, and it actually made the body lines line up a little better on the back end of the trunk. And here you can see it's all done. It's ready for sanding and paint probably next year when I get around to it. So I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. If you have any questions for me, you can feel free to message me or throw them in the comments. So if you like seeing this kind of stuff, like the channel, because there's a lot more of this kind of stuff coming. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.